So this is my audience. So, according to Alan Anderson in his article called "The Case for Paying Student Athletes," he stated that of the 126 Division I athletic programs, they generated a total of $7.6 billion in athletic revenue. And that is a huge amount of money. So, college athletics, in today's modern time, at least in my experience, around in the places I've been, it almost seems like that has taken the forefront of all sports over the National Football League, over Major League Baseball, over college basketball, college baseball, anything. It just seems like college basketball is just getting more and more popular. And that's sort of what brought upon the debate of should college athletes get paid, which is what I will be here to argue to you today, that I do believe college athletes should be paid due to the amount of revenue they generate for their school, the time that they spend on their sports, and the amount of time that they have to miss class for their sport. So me, I'm currently a student athlete here at Surrey Community College. And while the junior college level is not Division I, where we don't bring in as much money, have as much exposure and everything, I still have a little insight of just how hard being a college athlete is and why they should be compensated at the higher level, where we do the same things, but at the Division I level, the money they get, the more time they have to spend, and just everything that they bring in, while that constitutes them getting paid. So the main argument people normally say when talking about why college athletes should be paid or why they shouldn't, they normally say, oh, well, these college athletes are coming in on 70% to 100% scholarships. While this is true, they normally do have a scholarship coming in which helps cover some of the costs of school. It's nowhere near relatable to the amount that they bring in, which brings me to my first point that I will argue to you today, that college athletes should be paid because of all the revenue that they bring in. So according to Taylor Behrman in his article on why college athletes need a federal right of publicacy, he states that college athletes bring in so much money to their universities that the money that they bring in funds the school's departments like English, science, and math. And he goes on to talk about how without these college athletes, they wouldn't lose all of these departments, but it would be very difficult for them to be able to get the money for these departments and fund it without these college athletes. And some smaller colleges who don't get a lot of enrollment but are really big in sports, they maybe wouldn't be able to fund as many of their programs without these college athletes and all the money that they bring in. Behrman also stated that there are 28 schools in the NCAA Division I that bring in $100 million a year per year since the year of 2010. That is 28 different schools that of all their athletics bring in $100 million a year just off hitting a baseball, just off shooting a basketball on a goal, just throwing a football around. $100 million a year is an astronomical amount of money, and these athletes are working so hard and bringing all this money in and not seeing a dime of it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you ask me. Now, my second point of why college athletes should be paid is due to the amount of class time that they have to miss. So they're coming into school on all these scholarships and, to get a good education, and people use that they get these scholarships, so that's why they shouldn't be paid anything. So with these scholarships that they're getting, they're being asked to miss class up to one to two times per week with their sport not being in season. And then when their sport gets into season, that number just goes up even more, according to William Caniano. So all this class that they miss, it's taken away from their education that they're getting. So they're basically, it seems like they're having to put ball before school, which is hurting them in the classroom. So them having to put this on back and hurt themselves, they should be paid and compensated, since they're basically having to go to work by playing their sport and go bring in money for the college or university that they're at. So like I said, all this class time that's being missed just puts them behind, so they should be paid to be able to offset that. So my third reason, the third reason that I believe college athletes should be paid is due to the amount of time these athletes have to spend on their sport. So I interviewed one of my best friends. His name is Zach Franklin. He's a Division I baseball player at Western Carolina University. So I asked him to just total up all the time that he spends on his sport per week. So he got back to me, and the time that he stated was about 34 hours, give or take a few, so about 34 to 36. So this is how much time that he's spending per week just on his sport. Not to mention all the money he's bringing in on his sport, but this is how much time he's just spending on it. So spending all this time on his sport is definitely not easy. And 34 hours, that's very close to the average American work week, which is 40 hours. So 34 to 40, that's only about a 6-hour difference. So if these college athletes are spending time on their sport at almost the same amount of time that people are spending, working per week, why shouldn't they be compensated for what they're doing with all the money that they're bringing in? I mean, they're spending the same amount of time that you or maybe the average person would be at work. Like, think about it this way. Imagine you're working for this big company, you and a team of 4 other people, a team of 5. And you're making great sales for this company, you're getting them tons of exposure, and your company's just bringing in millions and millions of dollars. And you and your team of 5 is their main marketing source. They're using your name, they're using your likeness, they're using, your clothes, your jerseys to sell and make so much money. And they're making all this money and getting rich and being able to build grand things. But you, who's doing all the work and doing everything, you don't see a dime of it. People are just working and profiting off you. Now, to me, that really doesn't seem very fair. That you do all this work, you bust your butt, 6 days a week, and you do all this, and you don't see a single dime of it, especially when the amount of money you're bringing in is in the millions. It's just a little absurd to me. Which brings me to my conclusion, that college athletes should be paid due to the revenue that they bring in, the time they miss from class, and the amount of time they spend on their sport. So, one thing that could benefit from compensating these athletes, would be, there's a lot of athletes that leave school early to go pro. Maybe if you're paying these athletes, it would push more to stay all 4 years and have them get their degree, then turn pro or go to the workforce. Either way, but they're staying and getting their education and ultimately bringing in more popularity and everything, more years than if they were to just leave after one. So, according to NCAA.com, the NCAA recently, as soon as about a month ago, had a ruling that there's no set date on when this ruling is supposed to take effect, but they ruled that in the future, college athletes will be able to profit off their name and likeness. Okay, so this is sort of a step in the right direction. So your name and likeness, that means based off the popularity you bring to your school, your likeness is like your jersey sales and certain stuff like that. That's stuff that you could potentially be compensated for in the future due to this new rule by the NCAA. Now, it's very iffy because they haven't stated when they will let this rule take effect, but what I can say is that while this is a good rule, and like I said, it's a step in the right direction, it's not fully compensating all of the college athletes. It's only compensating, your more popular, just a select few, maybe not even from every school, just some of them. And this is good, but it still doesn't reward them for every single thing they're doing. Like, they're still not getting paid for all the TV ratings, for all the national championships they win, all the gate coming into their school that people, they buy tickets. They're not seeing any of that. And who knows, the NCAA hadn't even stated how much they can be compensated for the name and likeness. And who knows how much that may be. It should be more of a set in stone that they should be, if they're working close to 40 hours a week, then they should be compensated at an average wage for a 40-hour work week. And that still might even be too low, but that would be a great start. Somewhere that we could start compensating these athletes for all they're doing, because like I said, it's not like we're just paying them because they're good at sports and all this. No, we want to compensate them because they're bringing in all this money and working so hard, but yet they're not receiving any of it. So